Basketball news. The thing that we absolutely have to discuss is Alabama's home and away splits for the SEC conference schedule have been released, along with the rest of the SEC. So I'm going to pop it up here on the screen now, if you have not seen it already. And I think that Alabama got a pretty favorable home and away split this season. For home teams, they're playing Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky State, Missouri, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and A&M. And then for away, they've got Auburn, Florida, Georgia, LSU, State, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Vandy. Some of the big highlights that you need to be aware of. So the three teams that we got the duo for. So if you're not aware, the way the SEC does it is every team plays three teams, both home and away. So for Alabama this season, that's Mississippi State, Auburn, and Tennessee. I know Garth Glissman of the SEC conference on Twitter said something about them wanting to renew the Alabama-Tennessee rivalry. You know, Morgan Wallen has a song about it, and they felt that that was worth being a home and home. Just also a heads up, the way that they said that they were doing it is if one team had a home game, let's say last season, and then this season it was, or 2 seasons ago, they had a home game, and then last season was a home and home, the other team is getting the home game this season. So just a little bit of a heads up. That's the way some of the scheduling is working. They're trying to be as fair as physically possible. And when it comes to the home and away splits, I know some Alabama fans are going to be upset with the fact that Tennessee is our double this season. I know some of us would have preferred, maybe a Kentucky or maybe I know Florida last season was a big one that we did have home and away. But, those are the kind of things that I would really say that those are some of the big games. When you look at the home and away splits, I think it's pretty favorable for Alabama because when you look at the away games, obviously Auburn and Tennessee are both going to be big, but those are the dual games. So, we're getting them at home and we're getting them away, so not really much you can say about that. But outside of those two games, Florida's really, Ole Miss is going to be tough with Chris Beard, but Florida's really the other team that you get on the away side that quote unquote scares you, right? That's the one where you can circle of, that's a tough away only game versus some of the teams that would have been fairly tough away only games, Arkansas and Bud Walton Arena. Alabama's done fairly well against Arkansas, but, Calipari at home is never easy. Kentucky, having them only be home, that's great. Texas, I'm not sure how they're going to be this season, but having them is great. Texas A&M, obviously with Bucky McMillan, I know they've spent a lot of money on their roster. Having them only be home, I feel like you get pretty favorable having LSU, Georgia, Vandy, Oklahoma. All of those, again, Florida and Ole Miss. Florida definitely much bigger than Ole Miss, but Florida and Ole Miss being the two that you kind of have to circle as major away-only games is pretty favorable, right? This is something that I think that Alabama fans should be very, very happy for. Obviously, the SEC has done what they are capable of to try to make it as fair as possible. I'll be very curious to see when the actual timing of the schedule comes out. With Alabama and Auburn both having home games, we'll be very curious to see, are both of these on Saturdays again? With the Tennessee being home and away, are both of these on Saturdays? Because, some of those games are ones that we've talked about. And I will say, credit to the SEC, it seems like they're kind of circling some of the ones that are the more popular games. I would think with how popular that Alabama-Auburn game was last season, and with it being one of the most watched games, regular season of the entire season, I would expect them to probably put it on Saturday, but I am very curious to see how the timing works out on some of those, because that obviously very much does impact the number of fans that are able to show up. If you're unaware, if you've not been to any basketball games here recently, Alabama's fan attendance for midweek games is very good. It's not like we have poor fan attendance. You're typically looking at the 11 to 13,000 range out of a 15,000 seat arena. But it's a big Saturday game like that Kentucky game, that Auburn game, that Tennessee game. If these are all weekend games, they will all be packed, right? These will all be hard sellouts. These will all be big games in Coleman Coliseum. So those are some of the ones that you kind of have to pay attention to, because I do think that if Alabama is able to, get lucky and have those all be on weekends, right? And we will see when the schedule comes out and how everything shakes out with the actual release of the schedule. But if Alabama can get those, all on weekends and, not in back-to-back weeks, right? Have the schedule kind of fall fairly favorably to where it's not super backloaded. I think that Alabama really has a very good chance of doing great things with the schedule next season. Again, there's going to be some that you have to circle. Obviously, the way that you're always going to look at it is in the SEC, you have to defend your home court. So, the plan is going to be to drop no home games. For the away games, the ones you're absolutely going to have to circle: Auburn, Florida, Tennessee, Ole Miss. Those are probably the four that I circle for the away games, just off the rip, that I really think you have to look at, because I think all four of those are going to be very, very tough to win on the road. And then, of course, I think Auburn, Kentucky, and Tennessee at home, none of those are going to be cakewalks. But I do think that, again, defending your home court is something that you just absolutely have to do if you plan to try to win the SEC.